Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we have the Forbidden and Limited List update, which, yes, I have already checked out, but I actually did that on stream if you want to go check that out. But I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on the new Master Duel ban list. So, we're just going to go through these things pretty quickly. Starting off with some forbidden cards, we have Kaiser Colosseum and Catapult Turtle. Catapult Turtle may seem weird, but there's an FTK in the OCG that has been around with the Catapult Turtle and some of the new cards coming out with the Tachyon stuff. So that's just a good hit. It's a pre-hit to an FTK, so good on them. Second thing, Kaiser Colosseum. This card's silly. It's really, really silly, and it deserves to be banned. So I'm glad for it, and not really too beat up about it. Next up, we have limitations to Bonfire Summon limit, which is currently at 3 and is going to 1. This is standard, I think, across all of the formats now. TCG and OCG. OCG just got this card to 1, so TCG already had it at 1 in the previous ban list, and now it is going to 1 on the Master Duel ban list. This card is not fun. It's not very fair. Only being able to summon 2 times is really, really restricting, and very, very few decks can abuse that. Or not abuse that, but can like interact with that favorably. So it's really just frustrating. Next up, we have a whole bunch of semi-limits as well. We have Bonfire going to 2, we have Airlifter going to 2, and Per Lily going to 2. Bonfire basically doesn't do anything. It kind of hits the consistency of the deck, which it already is a little bit more inconsistent, so that's fine. The Snake Eye Fire King deck was probably the best deck in the WCQ, and then Rescue Ace was the second best deck, so Airlifter going to 2 also is pretty nice. But overall, none of that was like far and away the best deck. Or I should say, so much so that like nothing else could compete. Pearly was probably the second most, or the third most represented deck in the top 100. While I don't believe it's the third best deck, it was the third most represented, so there's that. And Per Lily going to 2 does matter. For the most part, in Master Duel, you really want to max out on your engine as you can, because you can't really prepare with like side decks and stuff like that. And oftentimes, like, Maxi will just like end your turn, so having access to additional engine to potentially either play through it or to play around it on like following turns and stuff like that does matter a lot more. Plus, just going through and cycling through the Per Lilies has mattered a lot more in both the OCG and in Master Duel. So this is probably the biggest hit. Will it change the meta? No, not really. In fact, Pearly wasn't really even meta outside of the WCQ. The only reason it's good is because it's anti-meta, as well as being able to kind of the best players are able to actually play it, whereas in Master Duel, most players don't actually know how to play Pearly. And then we have Double Azaius going to 2 from 1 to 2. This changes nothing. I know a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, Zeus, a card that's currently limited, is going to 2, and it has an effect that allows it to stack itself on top of itself, which means now you can have multiple Zeus, and you can do Zeus into Zeus and stuff like that. But for the most part, it doesn't really change anything. In theory, it does. In practice, it's no. Next up, we have cards to be unlimited, which we have Kieran, which I believe was just banned, and now is going back to 3, which is pretty cool, and for the most part is inconsequential. The main reason for this is because Kieran doesn't really do anything. It's an untargetable bounce, which is cool, but like, it's not really easy to search. The only decks that can play it are Pendulum decks that have the ability to pen summon it out every turn, and outside of that, it's like an okay disruption. But, like, Pend kind of needs it, so, yeah, this isn't going to change anything. In fact, the decks that currently are seeing play with Pendulum might not even play this guy, because you just kind of have to hard draw it. I guess you could technically go, like, Electromite, put it into the extra deck in order to pen summon it out, but, like, that's kind of difficult, and you're probably wanting to get something else, like a Chronograph or an Astrograph. We have Kashtira Birth going to 3. Does this change much for Kashtira? No. But should it be allowed? No. Birth is probably my #1 ban for Kashtira. I think Kashtira is just a very silly deck right now, and I'd rather have Birth and the other guy, a Riseheart band, and just have 3 Fenrir, 3 Unicorn. But honestly, all of the Kashtira cards are really, really silly, and just not very fun. It's a very high roll deck, so I don't enjoy it, but honestly, it's not going to change anything, so I don't hate it. I just don't like Kashtira. Next up, Yatagarasu. Yatagarasu's not doing anything. The thing is, like, in theory, it can prevent you from playing the game. It can lock you out of the game. In practice, it's not really going to do anything. If you get Yada locked, you were losing that game anyway. It's just that simple. So there you go. Next up, we have Ptolemaeus. Sure, this card's not... I think it was already at 1, so putting it to 3 literally doesn't change anything. And with it at 1, it didn't have really anything. Though I did get turn skipped with this card, so I don't know, maybe put it back to 0. But all in all, none of this really changes much. The big changes are most likely going to come from a pack release rather than from a ban list at this point. Mostly for 2 reasons. One, because if we get a good set of cards in the new pack, that is going to more likely shake up the meta at this point due to this most recent ban list. But also, too, there's not really an incentive for Konami to wildly change the game, especially with Worlds coming up. It wouldn't really make sense to wildly shake up the meta and change the game in such a drastic way to basically incentivize, or not incentivize, but like change the decks at the top, which is why there's not going to be much shakeups across the board. I think in the TCG, if we do get a ban list, it's going to be pretty minor. In the OCG, we kind of got a minor ban list as well. There wasn't too much of a shakeup with basically anything. There were limitations that kind of mattered, but for the most part, there wasn't much in terms of a shakeup for the meta. Like the Fiendsmith stuff is still absolutely playable. The Snake Eye stuff is still absolutely playable. Maxx is still allowed. And so for all of that, it does make sense as to why this is a more limited ban list. But even with that being said, it's still hitting major cards that are really problematic, and it's still a good ban list. So overall, pretty good, but there you go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below, and stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.